So, today I'm going to be reading you a poem by Clara Barton. She was a nurse in the Civil War. She also went on to start the American Red Cross. So, this is a poem she wrote about her experience as a Civil War nurse. Now, remember, this was written in the 1800s, so some of it may sound a little bit familiar in the sense that some of the rhyming kind of reminds me of if you've ever read some like The Night Before Christmas, like 'twas the night before Christmas, all through the house. So if you start to pick up on that, that's totally fine because they were written in similar time periods. So here we go. The women who went to the field, you say. The women who went to the field and pray. What did they go for? Just to be in the way? They'd not know the difference betwixt work and play. What did they know about war anyway? What could they do? Of what good use could they be? They would scream at the sight of a gun, don't you see? Just fancy them round where the bugle notes play, and the long roll is biting us on the fray. Imagine their skirts among the artillery wheels, and watch for their flutter as they flee across the fields. When the charge is rammed home and the fire belches hot, they never will wait for the answering shot. They would faint at the first drop of blood in their sight. What fun for us boys, ere we enter the fight. They might pick some lint and tear some sheets, and make us some jellies and send on their sweets, and knit some soft socks for Uncle Sam's shoes, and write us some letters and tell us the news. And thus it was settled by common consent that husbands or brothers or whoever went, that the place for the woman was in their own homes, there to patiently wait until victory comes. But later it chanced just how, no one knew, that the line slipped a bit and some began to crowd through. And they went, where did they go? Ah, where did they not? Show us the battle, the field, or the spot where the groans of the wounded rang out on the air, that her ear caught it not, and her hand was not there, who wiped the death sweat from the cold clammy brow, and sent home the message, T is well with him now, who watched in the tents whilst fever fires burned, and the pain-tossing limbs in agony turned, and the wet, the parched tongue calmed delirium strife, till the dying lips murdered my mother, my wife. And who were they all? They were many, my men. Their record was kept by no tabular pen. They exist in traditions from father to son, who recalls in dim memory. Now here and there one, a few names were writ, and by chance lived today, but a perishing record fast fading away. Of those we recall were scarcely a score. Dick Dame Brickdale, Edson Harvey Moore, Flayles Wittenmeyer, Gilson Safford Lee, and the poor cutter dead in the sand of the sea, and Frances D. Gage, our Aunt Fanny of old, whose voice rang for freedom when freedom was sold, and husband and Etheridge, and Harland and Case and Livermore, Alcott, Hancock, and Chase, and Turner, and Howley, and Powder, and Hall, all the list grows a space, as they come at the call. Did these women quail at the sight of a gun? Will some soldier tell us of one he saw run? Will he glance at the boats on the great western flood? At Pittsburgh and Shiloh, did they faint at the blood? And the brave wife of Grant stood there with them then, and her calm, stately presence gave strength to his men. And Marie of Logan, she went with him too, a bride scarcely more than a sweetheart, 'tis true. Her young cheek grows pale when the bold troopers ride. Where the black eagle soars, she is close to his side. She staunches his blood and cools the fever-burnt breath, and the wave of her hand stays the angel of death. She nurses him back and restores him once again to both army and state, the brave leader of men. She has smoothed his black plumes and laid them to sleep, whilst the angels above them their high vigils keep, and she sits here alone with the snow on her brow. Your cheers for her comrades, 3 cheers for her now. And these were the women who went to the war, the women of question. What did they go for? Because in their hearts God had planted the seed of pity for woe, and helped for its need. They saw in high purpose a duty to do, and the armor of right broke the barriers through, uninvited, unaided, unsanctioned oft times. With pass or without, they pressed on the lines. They pressed, they implored, till they ran the lines through. And this was the running the men saw them do. 'Twas a hampered work, it worth largely lost. 'Twas hindrance and pain and effort and cost. But through these came knowledge. Knowledge is power, and never again in the deadliest hour of war or of peace shall we be so beset. To accomplish the purpose our spirits have met, and that what they did, if the war came again, the scarlet cross floats where all was blank then. They would bind on their brassards and march to the fray, and the men liveth not who could not say to them nay. They would stand with you now as they stood with you then, the nurses, the counselors, the saviors of men. See? Told you it sounds a little like 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. So for your assignment for this, it's going to be a little different. So I've created a little PowerPoint for you, and you're going to be answering your questions about the poem on your PowerPoint. So Clara Barton, as pictured here. So let's look at your questions. So we got Clara Barton, a little information about her. This is her. She was a nurse during the Civil War. She also started the American Red Cross. Here's some other photos of nurses during the Civil War. Now remember, women weren't allowed to go to college to, do this stuff. They did it all on their own. They educated themselves. They finally started getting the respect they deserved. Okay, so as you can see, I chunked out the poem and there's some questions. The first question is, how did they think women were going to react to the war? So then you're going to write your answer in the space provided here. So you're going to type your answer right there. Okay, next question. What were the women expected to do during the wartime? And type your answer here. What did the women actually do on the battlefield? So remember, there was some preconceived notions of what actually was going to happen. And then what was the reality of the situation? Answer that question here. Did the women react to the war the way society expected to them? So I want you to see, did they faint at the sight of the gun, or did they step it up? Last question. We're going to connect it to current events here. Here you go, your connection question. Compare the situation of nurses during the Civil War to our current situation during the COVID-19 outbreak. So you're going to compare how maybe the nurses were treated or thought of during the Civil War to how nurses are being treated today during this whole outbreak. So there you go. Make sure to use complete sentences. Give me your complete thoughts, and there's your poem.